Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating macroeconomic theory from Beata Mosór called the SoloEconomy. If you've been feeling the ground shifting beneath traditional career paths lately, well, you're definitely not alone. We're actively transitioning from an era dominated by sprawling, rigid corporate hierarchies into what Mosór calls the liquid future. It's a world where economic gravity is shifting aggressively toward the hyper-efficient, autonomous individual.
I know, it sounds a bit like an exaggeration, right? But what if a single person, just sitting at their desk, could literally rival the output and valuation of an entire legacy firm? This isn't some distant science fiction pitch. It's an accelerating present reality. Artificial intelligence is fundamentally redefining market structures, labor dynamics, and honestly, how global wealth is actually created. To make sense of this massive shift, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. We'll start with the rise of the solo economy, redefine economic disruption, look at the demographic catalyst driving this, explore the micro-enterprise boom, check out the new currencies, and finally discuss future-proofing our economy. Let's get right into it.
All right, number one, the rise of the solo economy. So AI isn't just a shiny new tool you plug into a traditional assembly line, it's a fundamental generative force. Traditionally, starting a business meant you needed deep pools of capital, a huge human workforce, and massive administrative infrastructure. AI basically collapses all of those barriers. By drastically reducing information asymmetry and dropping transaction costs to near zero, it introduces a whole new layer of extreme economic freedom. It allows a single solopreneur to punch way, way above their weight class. Moving on to part two, redefining economic disruption.
To really grasp the gravity of this shift, we kind of need to reframe how we think about disruption. It's not some chaotic, destructive event, but rather a rapid market correction. In the past, small firms challenged slightly larger firms. Today, thanks to AI, a single decentralized entity, often just one person, can challenge massive, established legacy systems. Think about how a single developer armed with open-source AI models can threaten traditional tech monopolies. Agile individuals are quite literally replacing bloated systems. Classical macroeconomics has pretty much always relied on four pillars: households, businesses, local governments, and countries. But Mosór introduces a really disruptive fifth pillar here, the individual. The solo operator is now recognized as a fully independent vector of massive value creation. Their core input is intellectual property, generated right alongside AI. Human cognitive input acts as the spark, but the AI functions as an exponential engine, permanently decoupling productivity from traditional biological human labor hours.
Which brings us to number three, the demographic catalyst. These macroeconomic changes perfectly mirror what's happening in our actual homes. And the data here is just staggering. Single-person households are by far the overwhelmingly dominant and fastest-growing demographic. We're looking at over 76 million single adults without children in the US alone. That is a massive macroeconomic signal. These single-person households represent highly autonomous units of consumption and, in the AI era, incredibly potent units of production.
But here's the real pressure cooker aspect of this demographic reality. 61% of household consumption is strictly tied to basic survival, stuff like housing, water, food. When severe global inflation bears down on a single income, the math of a traditional 9-to-5 job simply fails. This relentless pressure structurally forces individuals to build wealth through AI solopreneurship. Basically, they have to do it just to survive.
All right, part four, the micro-enterprise boom.
Over in the United States, the numbers are absolutely mind-blowing. Out of all small businesses, an astonishing 82.3% are what they call non-employer firms. That means they have exactly zero paid employees. Yet these solo operators generated nearly $1.8 trillion in revenue in a single year. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 6.4% of the entire US GDP, generated by people working entirely alone or alongside their AI. And we're seeing a remarkably similar micro-enterprise boom across Europe, too. In Poland, for example, single-person entities make up 77.5% of all microfirms. Far from being fringe players, these solo operators actively generate over 42% of all enterprise jobs. They aren't just a part of the economy, they're becoming the actual engine of it. Operating a traditional solo business used to carry a massive mortality rate. You'd get crushed by fixed costs, taxes, and, well, your simple biological need to sleep. But AI microenterprises completely flip the script. They leverage AI agents to automate the marketing, the accounting, the logistics, the whole shebang. They transcend those traditional biological and administrative limitations, operating with extremely low friction and scaling effortlessly.
Next up, number 5, the new currencies. Because AI effectively marginalizes the cost of traditional cognitive labor and software production, we have to face a pretty radical truth. Our very definition of macroeconomic value has to completely evolve. We're rapidly moving away from currencies backed by physical commodities like gold or oil. In this new liquid economy, value pivots almost entirely toward intangible, uniquely human, and pure computational assets. The cycle of value operates on a totally new spectrum.
Let's walk through this news cycle step by step. In the solo economy, human focus is the ultimate scarce resource. You invest your attention and time to build your identity. That validated identity generates programmable value, or tokens, which purchase the compute power needed to run the AI. And all of this is secured by pure mathematical trust. It forms a completely self-contained, highly efficient loop.
Finally, part 6, future-proofing our economy.
So, what exactly happens when millions of solo operators armed to the teeth with AI start cannibalizing the market share of massive corporate giants? Well, it creates an existential crisis for sovereign states. Current tax systems rely heavily on taxing human labor. As AI automates that labor, governments have to implement structural fiscal reforms. They need to shift the tax burden away from humans and figure out how to capture value from intellectual property and raw compute power. Plus, national education systems have to drastically pivot. We can't keep training kids to be compliant cogs in a corporate hierarchy. We have to train them to be systemic thinkers capable of orchestrating autonomous AI ecosystems.
Which brings us to a final, really important thought. As the global economic center of gravity decisively transfers from massive, rigid institutions to the sovereign, AI-augmented individual, we have to ask, are our current economic systems actually ready for this liquid future? Will nations adapt their tax codes and mindsets to empower the solopreneur, or will they cling to 20th century paradigms and become structurally obsolete? The solo economy is already here. The only question left is who will adapt fast enough to thrive in it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a totally new perspective on your own economic potential.